Welcome friends to another r/MaliciousCompliance video. Get ready because we have some awesome compliance stories. Just like our first story of the day written by Pascal6662, be in the conference room at the time meetings are scheduled to start. A couple decades ago, I was working as a network engineer for a consulting company. The company owner, Kim, was the best salesperson I've ever met. Could sell ice to Eskimos. She had a temper, threw a shoe at me once, but great technical knowledge, and knew when she didn't know something. After I'd been there a couple of years, we got a new engineering manager. We all called him Richard. It's just that, around here, everyone named Richard is called Richard with a D. Sorry, no jerks in the story. Normal company policy had always been that meetings would be announced over the intercom when they were ready to start. We had engineering meetings once a month, early morning. The next one was announced a little later than normal, but eventually it was announced and we all headed over. Richard was not happy that few people were in the conference room at the time the meeting was scheduled to start. He made it crystal clear to us all that in the future, meetings would not be announced over the intercom, and he expected us all to be in the conference room at the time meetings are scheduled to start. We all knew the reason for that policy was that the owner was never ready for a meeting to start at the scheduled time. She was always running late, or the previous meeting ran over, whatever. The new manager flexing his authority and trying to whip us into shape with a dumb rule? Yeah, we didn't say anything. A few hours later, it's time for a meeting that actually includes the company owner. I head over to the conference room a few minutes early to find the door closed. I wait until meeting time, knock on the door, poke my head in, and ask if this was the customer meeting. The owner's like, "What the freak? No, you know we announced meetings over the intercom. Why would you think this is the customer meeting?" I say, "Our new engineering manager announced at the engineering meeting this morning that meetings would no longer be announced over the intercom, and we were expected to be in the conference room at the time meetings are scheduled to start." I'm surprised his head didn't explode the look she gave him. Kim said, "Meetings will be announced over the intercom when they're ready to start." I said, "Okay, thank you," closes door and leaves. That was the one and only time he ever announced a new policy. If you were given the opportunity to maliciously comply and show up to something that would clearly embarrass the person who was making awful policies, and you knew all along that it was not the right time to actually show up, would you do it just to throw that policymaker under the bus? Let me know in the comments down below. That said, our next story is by Objective Unknown. Wedding photos, cars, and cows. A pop story. Hello again. I once again have down free time and wanted to share another story about Pops, my grandfather. So back on the farm when I was a kid, Pops had several sources of income, cattle and chickens being a big part of it. He was also one heck of a good carpenter. And as a side gig, Pops would rent out the old farmhouse and bits of the property for weddings. It was a good source of income for Pops. He held 2 or 3 a month between May and October. This happened right before one such event. So Pops had rented out some of the land to hold a wedding, and several days before, Pops is going about his business. Well, Pops sees a couple of cars parked up in one of the pastures, so Pops went up to check it out. It was the couple getting hitched on the weekend, doing a pre-wedding photo session and their photographer. It's really no big deal. It's a normal thing to do. Well, Pops went up to them and tried to talk to them. Pops was trying to give them a simple warning about where they parked. Pops tried to tell them that it was a bad idea to park where they did because he was cut off. You know how brides and grooms can get so soon before they tie the noose, extra witchy. Well, they said they'd rented the land, that they were only going to be an hour, that they were going to move the car, they have the space rented out, so just deal with it. Pops being Pops just gave them "I was trying to tell you something for your own benefit, but if that's the way it's going to be." Pops was told to just leave them alone and to go back about his own business. And Pops gave them an okie dokie. At the time I was a young teen, Pops got back to the house and told me to grab my fishing gear. We're going to spend the day on the water. We got down to the dock and took off for a day of fishing. And we were gone for the entire day. Left around 11 a.m., got back close to 6 p.m. When we got back to the docks, the couple and their photographer are there, both still dressed in their Sunday's best. All I have to say is that the couple were so pissed off that they'd been trapped all day because of reasons that will soon become clear. Now, before I get into that, there's something you need to know about cows. Cows that have been well taken care of, who trust their handlers, are very curious, friendly creatures. Think of them as big dogs. and we had about 30 cows plus calves grazing the fields. We got back to the farm, and what do we see? An entire herd of cows around the 2 cars parked in the field, just having a grand old time. They wanted to see what was going on. The cows decided that all around the car was a good place to hang out for the day, completely trapping the cars on the pasture, making it impossible for the cars to move. And Pops, being the troublemaker, only had one thing to say. "I tried to warn you, but you told me to beat it, so I did." What was meant to be a 1-hour photo session turned into a day-long cow party. Best part of it was when Pops called the cows, "Here, cows," and they all stood up and came over like it was nothing. All I know is if I go out to some field somewhere and the owner, the farmer, or somebody that at least knows the lands comes up and says, "Hey, I gotta warn you about something," it's probably a good idea to hear them out. But these people were those entitled people that just assume you're there to harass them about even being there and not actually just trying to help them out. And also, if you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss my daily uploads. Our next story is by Chaotic Whisper 1918. I'm only here to clean? Okay. My boss is a generally nice and caring individual. She's always seemed to have all of our best interests in mind, and we've always felt as though we could go to her for anything. That is, until recently. She's been so cranky and accusatory to everyone, but especially those that she doesn't currently favor. Yes, my boss apparently picks favorites. This was news to me after years of working for her. I never knew or noticed before these past couple of months, but now I'm seeing her in a whole new light. She won't punish her favorite, even if they mess up multiple times in major ways, but will punish anyone if they step even slightly out of line. It's BS to say the least, and we are all done with it. The other day, I was in the back helping one of my coworkers with something and was back there for a little while. We had 2 other people up front manning the front desk, so it should have been fine. It was a Saturday, and we were busy but not that busy. We rarely need all 3 of us up front anyway. When my manager scheduled me for the Saturday shift, she specifically told me that part of my job was to go back and help that one coworker if she needed it. Well, she needed it, so I went back to help. One of my other coworkers must have mentioned that I was back there to my boss, because a few minutes later, my boss comes back and starts berating me for being back there. She says she's heard that I've spent 3+ hours back there every Saturday helping my coworker. Not even close, I spend maybe half an hour with her, and if I need to spend longer, I'll check up front first to see if the other coworkers are okay. She says my coworker has a dedicated helper, and that I need to spend my time cleaning because that's all you're here for. For reference, my coworker's dedicated helper is useless. They're worse than having no help at all. So, as someone who values my coworker, I go back and assist them whenever they need it because I know that their helper won't. This, coupled with the fact that the manager told me to do this, and the exaggeration of how much time I spend in the back, angered me and my coworker that I was helping. Then my boss just had to make it worse. I told her privately in a note everything that the helper wasn't doing. I told her how frustrated we all were, and how I was just trying to help my coworker like I was supposed to. I told her in excruciating detail how much my coworker needed a better helper and how I was going to continue helping her until my boss found one. My boss lost it. She got so angry and yelled at me. It's the first time in 5 years that she's ever gotten upset at me. She accused me of being a coward and that I needed to grow up. She said I basically told her screw you with my letter, which was not my intent at all. She wouldn't listen to anyone who tried to back me up and confirm what I'd said. She attacked everyone, enough to make my poor coworker run out of the room in tears and take a personal day because of how upset she was at the way my boss was treating us. By treating me and multiple other coworkers this way more than once, my boss has now created an environment of solidarity between her employees to not do anything extra for the business. We all used to go above and beyond for her, but not anymore. Things are not getting done now, and my boss can't figure out why. She snaps at us about it, and we try to tell her, but she won't listen, so we don't try to change it. I'm only there to clean on Saturdays, boss? Okay. My coworkers will be just fine without me, apparently. I used to stay late, update the website, I'm the only one who did, do extra paperwork, etc. But not anymore. I come in, I clean for the entire second half of my shift, and I leave. Nothing more, nothing less. And this, my friends, is why some franchisees have their locations at the bottom of the list, because they allow a workplace culture like this to propagate and continue. Where's the person that truly holds the checks and balances here? Why is this manager able to have this severe case of cronyism? Our next story is by Galatheria. I can do this all day. I worked in homes for disabled adults for over a decade. Every client had an ISP, individual service plan, and as a caregiver, it was our job to know what was outlined in each plan. Every year, the local baseball team hosts a night for the group homes. This was also when HR would come with any home that might need a hand. I got stuck with one of the most annoying HR people several years ago. Terry just thought she knew everything. She kept telling me I couldn't take photos of the clients. I could, we had photo permission. That one client didn't need their wheelchair to walk to the seating. They did, etc. We were seated next to another home that I used to be at, and so I helped those staff as needed too. One client had in his plan that his socks, braces, and shoes only had to be worn in the van for safety reasons. We had worked hard with him to get to that point. There was a lot of upset and punching involved, but we got there. Well, see, Terry thought she knew everything and insisted that this client had to have his footwear on. We kept trying to tell her that they wouldn't tolerate it. Her answer? Just do it, I'm right, you're wrong. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, bud, we have to put your footwear back on. And the other staff and I wrestled everything on. Not 5 minutes later, one shoe went sailing and landed next to Terry. Oh, bud, we can't throw our shoes. Next went the brace and sock, which hit poor Terry in the back of the head. Soon after, while we were picking up those items, off came the other footwear, of which the shoe and sock hit her head this time. Whoops, I know you don't like these, but we have to put them back on. Again, everything was stripped and launched. Every single thing hit Terry in the head again. I went to gather his things and said, I am so sorry. We will get these back on ASAP. She handed them back to me and said, forget it. Obviously, the ISP needs to state that he can't have his footwear on. Let me make a note. She looks at his plan, looks at us, looks at it again and says, oh, he only has to have them on in the van? Cackles. You gotta love somebody who has a severe case of I'm right-ism. What's especially the worst are the people who, in the face of sheer adversity and being able to see that they are literally wrong, but still having the inability to admit that they're ever wrong, so they'll double down and go for the most ridiculous excuses. Our next story is by Long-Suffering Squid. Don't interrupt. Had a customer call in. She loudly and aggressively launched into her issue. I went, to indicate that I was listening to her, and she snaps, don't interrupt. So I remain silent until she finishes speaking, and I stay silent. The silence drags on until she asks in a querulous manner, are you still there? I reply, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I wonder how effective this strategy is. Like, it's kind of a let the toddler tire themselves out kind of strategy, right? Just let them keep babbling, acknowledge them if you absolutely have to, and just let them keep on going until they just have next to nothing left to say. And our final story of the day is by Osha Beastie. Engineers, huh? This is an old one that I remembered about today. Working in an engineering shop, the boss came in and asked my mate to turn down a flange in the lathe for a rush job as an adapter for a client. My mate had a reputation for being awkward if not handled correctly, but he had a heart of gold and would help anyone. The boss gave him a drawing and told him to get on it as it was a rush job, and it was also quite an exotic metal that it was made out of. My mate looked at the drawing and realized that in the rush, the person that had made the drawing had got the dimensions mixed up. They had the ID, inside diameter, mixed up with the OD, outside diameter. My mate went to speak to the boss and showed him the error, but my boss told him to not say a word, but to just get it made exactly as per the drawing. Because the sizes were mixed up, it meant that if you turned the metal down to these sizes, it was just going to be a pile of metal cuttings. My mate waited an hour or so, then took a bag of cuttings through and left them on the boss's desk, along with the drawing, whilst the boss was at lunch. When he came back, he couldn't say a word, but he was livid. Well, if you're gonna be a total jerk and say, no, just do it, get it done, I don't want to talk to you, don't be surprised when that issue they caught is going to be an issue in the final result. That boss had no room to complain. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.